Joe has interviewed Hall of Famers, All-Stars, Olympic gold medal winners, league leaders, athletes who have left their mark on the game, announcers, reporters, and people in the world of sports who have had a great story to tell. And now, we welcome our next guest.
My guest on the 2-Minute Timeout Extra Innings has written several baseball books, and we'll discuss his latest work, Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets. Erik Sherman, welcome to the 2-Minute Timeout Extra Innings. The last time we spoke was 4 years ago. We discussed that your book with Steve Blass, A Pirate for Life, that you co-wrote with Steve. Tell us what you've been doing the past 4 years that led up to our discussion about your work today.
Well, it's certainly good to be back on the show, Joe. Well, after Steve's book, I co-wrote Mookie Wilson's memoir, Mookie Life Baseball in the 86 Mets, and that led into my current project, once again with the 86 Mets theme, Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets.
Why a book about the 86 Mets?
I get asked that a lot because obviously a lot's been written about the 86 Mets, but it was really the experience of co-authoring that book with Mookie. We would go to the book signings. We had 8 of them in 6 days after the book was released a couple of years ago. And I mean, they were rock star turnouts. We'd get 500-600 people turning up to these book signings. And this was a couple of years ago when the Mets were in the midst of a 6 or 7 year mediocre streak. Now they're pennant winners. They're the Kings of Queens again. But we were just really impressed with the enthusiasm that still surrounds anything about that 86 Mets team. And I knew that I was going to have to come up with a fresh angle. And I think I came up with one that's really resonated with the fans. And that was to go out and actually visit with members of that 86 team where they live today in their kitchens, their living rooms, their favorite restaurant, dugouts they might be coaching in. And so it really allows the reader to feel like they're right there with me, like they're in those dugouts or in those living rooms. That's the difference, and it's been very well received.
Why do you think fans are so interested in the lives of players after baseball?
I don't think they're interested necessarily in just any players. The 86 Mets, they won 108 games in 86. They played epic postseason series, the NLCS against Houston, and then the tremendous World Series against the Boston Red Sox. I mean, just probably the greatest postseason of all time if you include what happened over with the Red Sox and the Angels in their championship series. The Mets were on top of the baseball world. They were supposed to be in the beginnings of a dynasty with all that tremendous young talent that they had, guys like Strawberry and Gooden and Dykstra and so forth. And that was the only year that collection of players won the World Series. In fact, they didn't even return to the World Series with that group. So there was some mystery around that. And then when you combine that with all the off-field issues so many of those guys have had, both self-induced and otherwise, since the 86 season, just riveting human interest stories. So I think that's why people are really interested in hearing about not just what the Goodens and Strawberries are up to, but also some of the role players from that team that I visited, like Danny Heath, Kevin Mitchell, Ed Hearn, and so forth.
You chose a cast of characters from that team, 14 players you chose, and how did you come to that decision as to which players to choose?
It was based entirely on the fact that I wanted to get the starters, but then with the rest of them, I chose the more roving stories. So, you heard me mention Ed Hearn. He was the backup catcher to Gary Carter. Ed Hearn has lived the life of Job since the 86 season. He's had 3 kidney transplants, cancer he's battled. His son has battled cancer. Back in 86, he married a nurse who he's still married to today, and that story is just riveting. It's just amazing how those 3, the courage that they've displayed all these years. Danny Heath, who was a member of 5 postseason teams as a major leaguer, primarily as bench player, but he's one of the most successful college coaches in the country. So just a lot of stories that people don't know about those 86 Mets are in this book. So there's a lot of fresh material. It's completely fresh content. And with the more celebrated guys like the Goodens and the Keith Hernandez and so forth, I dig deeper than what's been reported before.
Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets. Erik Sherman joins us on the 2-Minute Timeout Extra Innings. You have a special relationship with Mookie Wilson, and you can feel that reading the book.
Well, he's one of the most decent righteous people you'll ever want to meet. He's an ordained minister now, as is his wife, Rosa, by the way. And he's just a very genuine, grounded guy. I mean, for someone that played for the Mets every single year of the 80s, the only one to do that. And then he went to Toronto and helped them make the playoffs. And he had a really nice career, 13 years, but just a terrific guy. But more specifically with your question, Joe, like when I did books with Glenn Burke, Steve Blass, and then Mookie, you can't help but become very close with these guys. I mean, they're telling you things they wouldn't even tell their wife or their clergy or their psychiatrist. I mean, they're sharing their deepest, most intimate thoughts with you. And not all of that gets in the book necessarily, but they really open up. And when that happens, you can't help but become friends with them, I think. Steve Blass and I have become tremendous friends, like a family member, and the same with Mookie.
Wally Backman might be the greatest manager who really never had an opportunity to manage and may never have an opportunity to manage in the majors. And explain to our listeners what the situation is with him.
Yeah, you're correct. He is, I think, at least in modern times, the greatest minor league manager to have never managed in the majors. And it's a sad story. I mean, he was involved in a domestic dispute some 15 years ago. His account of the story is that he got into an argument with a woman that was visiting his wife, and the argument was about this woman's husband that she was divorcing, and it happened to be one of Wally's best friends, and it got heated, and the woman, allegedly Wally's World Series bat, hit him in the arm with it and broke his arm, and Wally showed me the scar on his arm. It was like 9 inches long, where a plate had to go in apparently, and he proved his point to me. But anyway, with all the focus on domestic violence today, that story has kind of kept him out of the major leagues. And you may recall he was hired by the Arizona Diamondbacks to manage their team back in 2004. And then a New York Times article brought up the domestic dispute, and they pulled the offer. I mean, there was a press conference and everything, and they took the job away. And Wally hasn't been offered a major league job since.
So final moments with Erik Sherman, author of Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets. You ended the book by interviewing Sandy Carter, Gary Carter's widow, and ironically, the clean-living Gary Carter was the first to pass away, when one would think that any number of former players from the Mets would certainly precede Gary Carter. That had to be really heart-wrenching at times speaking with her, wasn't it?
It was, but also very enlightening, and I think it's a very positive chapter. When Gary joined the team, he was nicknamed Camera Carter. When he came from the Expos, a lot of his Expos teammates didn't really like him. There was a perception that he was holier than thou. And he goes to that Mets team, that liked to go to strip clubs, liked to party, that type of thing, which wasn't a whole lot different than a lot of other clubs, by the way. But they lived like rock stars, a lot of them, and Gary was a family man. He was a man of faith. The evolution of the relationship those Mets players had with Carter until the day that he died of brain cancer is really the ribbon that you could almost wrap around this book. Now he is just so revered and admired by the 86 Mets players, many of them telling me that they wish that they had lived their lives more like Gary did.
Finally, Erik, there's a perception by fans of what life is like for professional athletes, and if you look at the day-to-day issues of those players, in spite of the fame and money, it can be very difficult for them if they don't handle it properly.
Oh, sure. I think the game has really changed today. I don't get the sense at all that these guys have nearly as much fun, but the money is so much bigger today than it was even in the 80s. Like your top player in the 80s was getting $2 million. Today, you have backup second baseman making $4 million. The players today, they really take care of themselves a lot more, and a lot of times I think it's 25 players, 25 taxis, as opposed to a team like the 86 Mets where 14 or 15 of them would go out to dinner and then go out to a bar together and talk about the game or talk about whatever, but they were much closer. Because the money wasn't there like it is today, a lot of those guys squandered it. I mean, Lenny Dykstra, for example, he's really an exceptional case because he made a tremendous amount of money outside of baseball and then lost it all. Some of these guys just take a lot of chances, and in the case of Lenny, they lived as recklessly off the field as they did on it, and you can't do that.
Once again, thank you very much, and I mentioned to you before we did this interview that when I started reading the book after about a chapter and a half, I said, I don't want to finish this book because I'm really enjoying it. Kings of Queens, Life Beyond Baseball with the 86 Mets. Erik Sherman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much again for having me, Joe.